Yesterday, I published a video on the CRO token, so the token that powers the Cronos blockchain that's issued by the centralized exchange Crypto.com. Now, in that video, we mainly talked about relative valuations. We mainly talked about the usage of the blockchain. We did not talk about the news, and this is what we're going to do in this video, because there's quite a bit of confusion around what's going to happen with CRO. So the big news is that the Trump Media Group is partnering with Crypto.com and launches together a SPAC, so a special purpose acquisition company, basically an easy version of an IPO, in order to create a company that purchases CRO tokens, that purchases the tokens of the Cronos blockchain. Now, the numbers around these purchases are very confusing, probably intentionally so. The number of $6.4 billion is getting thrown around everywhere, but this might be an inflated number. Here's what's going on. Trump Media plans to acquire $105 million worth of CRO. In return, Crypto.com invests $50 million in Trump Media equity. And then on top of that, there are plans to buy $1 billion worth of CRO, and there's a $5 billion equity line of credit. Now, this doesn't have to all go into CRO. It very likely will not. But still, the founder of Crypto.com likes to throw this number around, the $6.4 billion treasury, but really, we're just looking at a few hundred million, at least right now. And so have a look at what's happening with the stock of the Trump Media Group. The ticker symbol is DJT, and what we're seeing here is the relative valuation to the Nasdaq 100 or Nasdaq 100 ETF QQQ. The performance hasn't been too great relative to the benchmark, an underperformance of 87%, and that's in the last 4 years. And even this announcement didn't really create too much excitement. Now, for the centralized exchange, for Crypto.com, this is a big deal, because with those close ties to the US government, there's probably not going to be too much regulatory scrutiny. But does that mean that the CRO token is a great investment now? Check out this from velo.xyz. Reports of Trump Media buying $6 billion in CRO is inaccurate. The digital asset treasury bill will begin with 19% of CRO market cap in tokens and $20 million in cash, which was obtained by selling tokens at a 50% discount. Further purchases dependent on credit lines and warrants. So really, what seems to have happened over here is that Crypto.com provided the CRO token it already had at a 50% discount to this newly created SPAC company. Here is the SEC filing. I will link this below in the video description. But the TLDR is that there's going to be a new entity. 3 parties are involved: Yorkville, Trump Media, and Crypto.com. The funding is $1 billion worth of CRO tokens that got given to the company at a 50% discount, as we already know. And those CRO tokens did probably not get bought on the free market. They were probably already in ownership of Crypto.com. There's $200 million in cash and another $220 million of warrants. And so probably the idea of this enterprise is that if the SPAC price goes high enough, if that stock price appreciates enough, that then we will see this line of credit kick in for more purchases of CRO or potentially other cryptocurrencies. That seems to be the overarching plan. The Trump Media Group seems to have gotten a good deal on CRO, and Crypto.com was able to get rid of their tokens and bring in some liquidity and some hype, which helps, of course, the solvency of the platform as well. Now, let's have a look again at the CRO price relative to other cryptocurrencies to get an idea how much upside there might be. This is CRO relative to Ethereum. And since June of 2019, so for more than 6 years, CRO, even after this rally, underperformed Ethereum by 63%. Here is CRO relative to Bitcoin. Here the underperformance is 42%. And here is CRO relative to the others market cap. So that looks at all other smaller cryptocurrencies. Also here, we've got an underperformance of 66%. Now, where does the underperformance come from? It usually comes from an expanding token supply. So CRO is an inflationary cryptocurrency. If the demand doesn't grow at the same rate as the supply, then the token tends to underperform long term. And so really, does it make sense to buy CRO long term? Or is this just another case of owning a centralized exchange token that might not be worth that much over the long term? This is FTT, This is the token of the FTX exchange. Initially, everything looked very nice until a major stakeholder sold the FTT, right? This was CZ that announced selling their tokens. After it became clear that a lot of the collateral that FTX used was simply their own tokens that went too liquid. CRO, by the way, is also not the most liquid token on the planet. I'm not saying that we're going to see an FTT 2.0 with the CRO token. All I'm saying is that the usage of the Cronos chain is still incredibly low. Nobody uses the chain at all. The valuation of CRO is now extremely high after the news have been announced. And the long-term tokenomics are somewhat questionable. Have a look at other centralized exchange tokens. Cronos is now at a market cap of 12 billion, and thus it's more than double the size of the BitGet token. It's 4 times the size of OKB, 6 times the size of Gate.io, 8 times the size of KuCoin, KCS. And the question really is, does the fundamental usage justify this price? Or will Crypto.com potentially be able to influence regulation in a way that there might be some licenses that are hard to get, that maybe Crypto.com gets first, that in the end maybe the US market will concentrate towards Crypto.com. Who knows? But this is all still speculation. It's very unclear whether or not Crypto.com and especially the Cronos chain will get more adoption in the future. Now for the short term, it might be the best to just use trailing stop losses. As in, as the rally continues, we can just adjust the stop loss. And if at some point the rally stops because the hype dies down and the trend turns around, then we simply just exit very quickly. This could be a potential strategy. I'm personally not invested in CRO right now. And I don't plan to do so anytime soon, simply because I don't like the nature of such assets. But if you're currently in, simply just adjusting the stop loss and then exiting quickly once we fall below might make more sense, because historically we have seen how those rallies end at some point and how they can then turn into a mean reversal again. Most trading volume, by the way, interestingly enough, doesn't happen on Crypto.com anymore. Cronos now mainly gets traded on Upbit, so that's a Korean exchange. The perpetual futures traders don't have too much stake in the token, but they are net bearish on the token. The funding rate is negative, so the shorts have to pay the longs in order to bet on falling prices. If you're bullish on Cronos, you might as well buy the perpetual futures and earn that financing rate. And here's the open interest. It spiked. And of course, there is a correlation between the spot price and the open interest. As there's less bets on the price, the spot price tends to go down as well. So there's no question about it. There is a lot of hype around Cronos right now. Is CRO becoming another treasury asset to the same degree like Bitcoin? So here's the holdings of MicroStrategy and the like over time. Or will it become similar to Ethereum? So here's the holdings of the treasury companies for ETH plus the ETFs. I'm not so sure. This seems to have been a one-time deal to launch a SPAC, hoping that more retail investors buy the stock to potentially then lever up future purchases of CRO. Will this happen? Time will tell, but I'm personally not betting on it. Now, I'm trying to be different on this channel compared to most other channels. Most other channels just say buy asset A or buy asset B and you will make a 10 or 100x return. But most of the time, most people just get wrecked in the process because sometimes there's a conflict of interest, right? The influencer might already own the token, or the influencer might have even gotten paid by the project to talk about the token. But I try to do something different here. I'm trying to show that I'm not just talking, but I'm actually doing. So I opened a capital pool for the members of this community 1.5 months ago. And so far, this capital pool has an annualized performance of 79%. It started on July 10th, and so far had only had a maximum drawdown of 2.3%. So that's what I'm actually most proud of, as in the gains are very, very constant, yet still very high. And the way to achieve those gains is by buying things like this. So this is a relative valuation chart. This is another relative valuation chart. Here is one more. And we're betting on one asset to do worse than the other. So this, for example, is WorldCoin. It's got an expanding token supply. Thus, it tends to underperform Ethereum. This is Ethereum relative to WorldCoin. Over here, we've got the token supply of DYDX. This is a decentralized perpetual futures exchange, also a growing supply. And then we see how Ethereum outperforms DYDX. Or over here, we've got the Balancer token. I've talked about this for a long, long time on this channel. And here is Ethereum relative to Balancer. So this is how we can achieve those very high returns by having very little volatility, very few drawdowns, because we cancel out the overall macro development. Yes, it's possible with crypto to double the capital just in a few months, but then also the risk is very different compared to what we are doing here. Because there are times where everything is going up, but there are also times where everything crashes, right? This is a long-term chart of Cardano. This was a crash of 97%. Then we saw a new all-time high, a subsequent crash of 92%. And that's always the problem with trying to chase the next altcoin. There's no protection against the macro environment turning around. But let's have a look again at those relative valuation charts. This again is Ethereum relative to Balancer. And at the bottom, we now see the Bitcoin price. So Bitcoin went through an entire bear market, a 75% correction. But at the same time, this relative valuation trade still made money. Let's actually have a look at this on a logarithmic chart. Then we can see the percent changes a bit better. Just have a look at this, right? This is how we make constant gains without these massive drops. And I truly believe that this is the way to really make money in crypto. It's with relative valuation trades. It's just with figuring out, is A better than B or is B better than A? And cancel out the overall macro environment. We don't necessarily want to have too much exposure to the macro, because once we have too much volatility with our portfolio, then it's much harder to bet more capital. So think about this the other way around. Let's say we go for those moonshot bets, right? Let's say we want to make a 10 or 100x return. And let's say every now and then we're actually successful at doing so. The problem is very often those bets do not work out. Thus, we can't bet 10,000, 100,000 or even more dollars on such a bet. We have to do small bets and hope that among many of those bets, maybe one of them makes a multiple X returns. But that means we can't really invest a lot of capital. The lower our volatility is on an asset, the more we can potentially deploy, because then, at least mathematically, it's less risky. The less risk we have, the more we can deploy. The more risk we have, the more the risk of ruin, the more the risk of going down by 80 or 90%, the less we can invest. It's a bit like doing those very small bets, hoping for the best outcome, versus actual serious investing where we get nice compounding growth. And so yeah, there is this capital pool. The members get exactly this return right now. I don't just talk the talk, I'm actually showing the world openly how things perform in the open market. And I wonder if the other YouTubers that you're following are willing to do the same. And if they are, is the performance going to look like this? I followed this strategy of relative valuation bets for 4 years now, and because of that I got much more return compared to just buying and holding Bitcoin. Had I dollar cost averaged into Bitcoin, I would have gotten the return indicated here by this gray line. But because I entered relative valuation shorts, I got the return here in black. And so the community is following the strategy as well and sharing their gains over here in this chat. I'm of course sharing my trades as well. So this is July 23rd when I opened a short position on WorldCoin. So that's short WorldCoin and long Ethereum. And then a few days later, I closed it with some nice gains. This is just one example. My target with this community is not just to show how great the strategy works and how relative valuation bets is really where the alpha is. My target is not just to make money with that trading. My real target is to create a community where most members make money with the same approach as well. Of course, with the community capital pool, I also take a cut of 10% of the gains, but I think that's still comparatively fair because most other hedge funds, they take 20%, and at the same time, they also charge 2% of the entire principal every year. There's no such charge that I'm doing here for the members. The capital pool has been closed though, so the maximum deposit limit has been reached. There will be a new pool opening at the beginning of next year, but still, you can manually copy trade everything that I do. I share my trades in real time. And while everybody can share testimonials on websites, it can sound like it's cherry picked, right? Maybe the majority of people don't really make money with this. But that's why just today I asked the community members, has Premium helped you improve as an investor? And 87% said yes. Yes, I myself also voted with yes here, so make it maybe 86%. So of course, not everybody is happy. There are people that are still not able to make money. But I think 86, 87% is not too bad of a ratio. If you're willing to learn, if you're willing to follow the content, if you're willing to also implement the risk management strategies, then there's a very good chance that you will be among those 87% as well. I was thinking about this. How can I make this actually as easy as possible for new people to enter here? And what I thought is maybe I try to find an approach to make this with as little risk as possible. As in, I thought maybe there's simply just a bit of content that you have to watch first. Then I share my favorite trade that I have a lot of conviction in. And then after 1 month, if you don't make money with that trade, then I will just refund you the entire membership fee. So really, you don't have any risk with that membership fee. So here's what you have to do. You have to watch 2 videos only. It's how to bet on relative valuations by using perpetual futures on Hyperliquid, and then how to do risk management with relative valuation bets. Those 2 videos are just 1 hour in total. That's all the content you have to follow. Once you've done this, you join the community. So that's different channels on Telegram. And once you're in Telegram, then I will send you my favorite trade. Trades that look very similar to this and this and this, for the same reason, because of token inflation. That's why those tokens tend to do worse than Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana over time. And if you're not making money on a chart like this after 1 month of joining, then of course I'm willing to just refund everything. And with everything, I mean, of course, the membership fee, which is currently $125 per month. So this is now for the manual copy trading. This is now for learning how to actually make those bets. But if you're interested to be among the first people to join the next capital pool, which will launch at the beginning of 2026, that announcement will be made to the annual members. There will be an additional cost. It will not just be the annual membership, but the annual members will get early access. So feel free to change from monthly to annual if you don't have that much time, but you do have more capital. So that's more of a hands-off approach. If you have at least $10,000, better even more to invest in crypto. Then the annual membership might make sense long term. A link to Premium will pop up directly here on the screen. Just click on that. It will lead you to the website. If it's the very first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish here regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. It helps the channel grow. See you next time on YouTube, or see you in Premium. Cheers!